Earlier this week, the temporary truce in Gaza came perilously close to falling over. Hamas threatening to delay the release of Israeli hostages until further notice, claiming Israel had repeatedly breached the ceasefire. Israel in response threatening to return to fighting if Israeli hostages weren't freed by midday on Saturday. It now appears that that crisis may have been averted. Hamas says talks involving Egyptian and Qatari mediators have been positive, and there's been progress on one of the key demands, getting more aid, particularly shelter and caravans into Gaza. Indeed, there are trucks lined up at the Rafah crossing in Egypt waiting to deliver those supplies, desperately needed with wet, wintry weather buffeting Gaza in recent days. As a result, Hamas says it will go ahead with the next Israeli hostage handover as scheduled. The details of that we're expecting to learn on Friday. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has held a briefing with top military and security officials since that announcement by Hamas. Israel's message here very clear.
3 live hostages must be released by Hamas terrorists on Saturday. Now, if Hamas do not adhere to the agreement, indeed if they violate this agreement and do not release our hostages, the government has made clear that it has instructed our armed forces, and we have already amassed forces inside and surrounding Gaza. So, if those 3 are not released, if Hamas does not return our hostages by Saturday noon, the ceasefire will end.
That military build-up seemingly had the approval of the US President Donald Trump, who reiterated his threat earlier this week that all hell would break loose if Israeli hostages weren't handed over by midday Saturday. He had said all hostages, which fueled some confusion about just how many hostages needed to be freed for this ceasefire to hold, but the messaging from the Israeli government now appears that that number is 3. This breakthrough does not solve the issue, however, of what happens after the 6-week ceasefire ends on the 2nd of March. There still isn't an agreement on a lasting peace in Gaza, although Benjamin Netanyahu is facing pressure at home, with protesters calling for him to ignore calls to restart the conflict and extend that truce to get all hostages, dead or alive, back to Israel. Donald Trump's pitch to clear out Gaza and resettle Palestinians in countries such as Egypt and Jordan also casts a long shadow over that process. Jordan's king was welcomed back to his country's capital, Amman, after telling the US president his country wouldn't back any proposal which would lead to permanent displacement of Palestinians. So while the ceasefire holding for now is something of a breakthrough, there is still a long way to go to ending the war and rebuilding Gaza.